Is it the pen?
No, we haven't seen them yet. We're the only ones today. We're the only hearings today.
Oh.
It is.
Is my hair straight?
No, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Often.
Right.
Review with 20. Small part. I'll set tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah. You have quality. No. I'll give you that. Great things. They started asking me, oh, and of course, I tell them. We need to give you your money or whatever for the country club thing. Yeah, I talked to her about it. She told me, what the? That sounded nice. She hadn't been back up here. Lisa's not back up here. She's sitting outside that window up there. You're sure? Yeah. In Charlotte. Yeah. She told me it was no big deal. We can pay whenever. I'll let y'all know. I just need to get a number for Patrick, and then we can. We need to let everybody know. Yeah, I guess I'll send out an email. And
Okay, good morning. The time is 9:05. The date is November the 12th, 2024. We, as a board here, are convening in Baton Rouge at headquarters. And the first, or I think maybe all of our cases, but the first case for sure is going to be at David Wade. On my left on the board today is Jerry Ledoux, and on my right is Danny Barris. And my name is Steve Prater. I'm the acting chairman today. We have staff here present with us. If y'all would introduce yourselves.
Jason Thompson. Sherelle. Carla Williams.
Francis Abbott.
Okay, thank you for that. That's the staff that's here in Baton Rouge with us. And we have a number of people for this first hearing, but before we get into who that is, we're going to be going to David Wade. And so would the warden, would you introduce yourself and the staff there that's with you?
Yes, sir. Good morning. Michelle Dozot, warden.
Brenda Ackland, deputy warden. Kristen Harper, classification.
And Anshaw classification.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate that. And so the first case that we're going to be hearing today is David Opperman. And I see Mr. Opperman, I believe that's you. Is that you with the warden there?
Yes, sir.
And you have a piece of paper with you Okay, we don't need to identify who you are, but what is do you know your DLC number?
Yes, sir, Mr. Prater, it's 771-315.
Okay, all right. And so we have a number of people, and I'll read their names quickly, and we'll talk about who's going to speak and all that in a minute. We have a number of people here that are in favor of you getting your parole, and then we have some that are in opposition. So these are the ones, just so that you'll know who is here, even if, I don't know if you can see them or not, but these are the folks that are in favor, and they are Jennifer Cameron, pardon me if I screw these names up, because I will. LaQuellen Bristow, Audrey Ferguson, Jane Opperman, Cynthia Hildebrandt, Diane Tate, Andrea Grafey. No, that's wrong. How do you say that? Is that right?
Andrew Grisette.
Okay. All right. Jean Woodside and Virginia Willis. And those that are speaking against are Emma Acorn and Jeff Trailer with the Attorney General's office. And so we'll get into them speaking on behalf and such as that. But the case today has been assigned to Danny Barris, who is to my right here. And he's going to be the one that's going to be taking the initial lead and in asking all the appropriate questions. And just so you know, and just for the edification of everybody that's here, we have presented these cases weeks before. And so we have read all the offense reports and all the everything. So this isn't just a willy-nilly deal. We're very familiar with the cases before today. We just have questions that we might want to ask today or things that we want to hear. So having said that, Mr. Barris, would you go ahead and start out the question?
Yes, sir. Basically, the standard question for everybody is, what have you done to get yourself here? And what have you done to improve since you've been incarcerated? And why do you think we should be releasing you early today? So it's a three-part question, but it's a standard.
Well, if I might answer the last question first, that's what I have here before me, if I may.
That's fine.
And I hope you'll pardon me, Mr. Barris. This is an important moment. So I've written this, and I hope you'll forgive my reading it.
No problem.
Thank you, sir. So the answer to that question, why should the board consider me for parole? My answer to that is because I'm not the same man I was 2 decades ago when I committed my criminal conduct. Back then, it was 20 plus years ago, I was living a life of pride, and I valued my career and social advancement and material things above everything else in my life. And my life began to change in 2001 when I met and married my wife, Jane, who's there with you. And it was through her resolute sense of morality, her strength of character, and her leading example, she sparked a change in me that eliminated my conceit and led me to a faithful life of service to others. I've done a lot of reading and reflecting since I've been here, and I've read recently from St. Augustine that the Lord teaches us through sorrow and wounds us to heal us. And over these past 2 decades, I've been wounded with sorrow, guilt, remorse, and self-loathing so deeply that I lack human words enough to express how sorry I am for all the suffering that I have caused. And I say to anyone and everyone I have harmed, directly or indirectly, that the vice of pride that once fueled my life is dead in me and has been replaced with a devotion to making amends and to serving others in any and every way. I'm in my 3rd year of a 5-year sentence, and this will be my only opportunity for parole. I've ignored the advice of men here who've told me that I should just do my time and not work or take any classes. The reentry and risk management classes required for parole normally take 3 years to complete. I finished them in less than a year so that I could be here, present, and ready for this moment. On top of that, I've worked every day since I've arrived at the honor dorm here at David Wade. I've not broken any disciplinary rules. I've not been idle with my spare time. I've read, I've reflected and meditated in prayer constantly. I tutor men in math and adult literacy and law. I have a space in the hobby shop that I use to make colored pencil drawings for Jane. I work the soundboard and sing harmony for one of the bands here, and I play on one of the softball teams. My risk level is low, and the transformation that has lasted in me over the past 2 decades makes me a risk to absolutely no one. If you grant me parole, you'll return me home to a life of support from my wife, my children, family, and friends in and beyond our community. I'll report to my parole and my subsequent probation officers, and I'll abide by every rule. I'll return to the same stable and obedient life that I had and have been living. I do ask that you grant me parole if that is God's will for me. And if it is his will that I remain here, then I'll accept that result with the same grace and thanksgiving. And I thank you. Now,
Okay.
That was the last part of the question.
yes, sir.
Can you-
The first parts you will have read in the offense reports and my pleas of guilty and no contest, and the sentence that I received in answer to what have I done since I've been here. My transformation, Mr. Barris, began years ago. So what I've done here is just to continue the same way of thinking and the same way of living that I had been doing before I got here. And that is to be a man of peace, mercy, faith, understanding, patience, love. So it's just been a continuation, I think, of how I believe, of how I've been living before.
Okay. All right. I don't have any more questions.
Okay, let's go ahead, before I call on Miss Jerry, let's go ahead and I want to hear from the speakers and everyone else, and then we'll wrap it up with the final questions if there are any. Took it a little bit differently that time. Okay, let's hear from Jennifer Cameron. Would you like to go first, or would Jane Opperman or Andrea? Who would like to go first?
I'm his attorney, sir, so I'd like to go last. We'll let Jane go first, if that's all right.
That'd be great.
Just It's Jane Opperman. I'm married to David. I'm a school teacher. I was raised by 2 educators.
Excuse me, ma'am. Let me interrupt you.
Probably can't hear you.
Probably can't. Let's see. Does the staff have any idea how we can you speak up or
You,
maybe?
you can come closer if you want. You can come stand right up.
I know you're nervous, but we don't bite.
I just don't have.
And I don't know how many people are watching on TV, but it doesn't make any difference. Go ahead.
I'll start over. My name is Jane Opperman. I'm married to David Opperman. I'm a school teacher. I was raised by 2 educators. My mother was a teacher. My father is superintendent of schools. We were raised with a very high moral code. I too have a high moral standard of living. We raised our 3 children that way. Andy, our oldest, is 30, Paul is 22, and Mary Jane is 20. David and I have been married for 23 years. Our marriage in the early years, it was rocky and difficult. David was not easy. He had an inflated ego. It kind of interfered with reciprocal obligation at home. We had financial struggles. It didn't help in the mix, but we were very committed and continued to work on our marriage throughout all those years. Our difficulties were private between us. Our children were not aware of that. Our home is, it's always been calm, peaceful, quiet. David has always been a very good, very involved father for all of our children. He practiced law, he was also a prosecutor, and he did all of these things with complete integrity. He's always treated people, regardless of position, with kindness and respect. He is sincere, he's a caring listener, he's kind, empathetic. He's always had a really soft spot for the less fortunate, those in need. During his career, he's helped numerous people legal needs for no compensation. The removal from his removal has caused serious impact and adversity on our family. And obvious hardships are just the difficulties of running home alone, just the financial burden, the burdens placed on our children. I keep a really rigorous kind of nonstop pace. I teach school. I coach tennis for middle and high school, fall and spring. I have private weekly tennis lessons. I teach summer school, and Mary Jane and I bake cakes and sell cakes over the holidays. The harshest punishment for David has been the removal and the separation from me and our family, not to mention the daily degradation and privation of prison setting. He's done his very best to endure this with humble grace and humility. David is not, he's never has been a threat to anyone. He's used this time for complete transformation from a man who was suffering ego and pride to becoming the most humble man in utmost faith and Christian values. Our days on this earth are limited. Humbly asking the Lord to please have kind mercy and give David a second chance to help him not have to spend another precious God-given day separated from us. Our children and our family are asking the Lord to please give us an opportunity to put our lives back together. No one we know can remotely know what we're going through. And no one in the world can make him feel worse about poor decisions he made over 20 years ago. People make terrible mistakes in this world. We have forgiven him, we miss him, we need him home, and we welcome him home.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
All right. All right, next we will hear from either Virginia Willis or Andrew. I've got the name right now. It was not my fault. It had Andrea something, but it's Andrew Grazappi.
Andrew Grazappi, yes, sir.
Grazappi, that's much better. Thank you. And sir, go ahead and state the case.
Thank you all for the opportunity to be here. Good morning, board members. My name is Andrew Grazappi. My wife Kelly and I, we have 5 children. We live in West Louisiana Parish for 19 years. I'm here today on behalf of my friend, David Opperman, and his wife, Jane. My wife and I have known Jane and David for over 10 years. David and I served on the West Louisiana Parish Board Commission together, and we volunteered at the school where Jane works, and our children have attended there. Jane has been the tennis coach for our girls for several years, which they love going out there every week. My wife and I have gone very close to the Oppermans over the years. The Oppermans have raised 3 hardworking, respectful children. They've all been a pleasure to be around. David has always been a voice of reason and understanding, whether serving on the board commission or in the community. David Opperman is an asset to his family, as evidenced through his children and through his marriage. He's an asset to our community, as evidenced by the many friends he has. Many of you see here today, many of them are at home praying for him. David's family and community benefit tremendously if he's allowed to go home. My wife and I, as well as other families, are committed to helping he and Jane have a successful marriage and life when he returns home. I'd like to thank this board for allowing me a moment to speak on behalf of my friend David Hoffman. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate those words. Okay, next we will have Virginia Willis, who is a friend. Virginia, take it away.
I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of David Opperman and his family. I met David when I was I was 17. I grew up in St. Francisville and remember when he arrived. We became friends and got to meet Jane whenever they started dating, and then soon fell in love and got married. My husband and I formed a deep family friendship with Jane and David. When our kids were very little, we had back-to-back kids the same ages. It was one of those perfect situations where our kids clicked and grew to become best friends. And we were actually able to say we loved and respected their best friend's parents. We had taken their kids on family vacations. Our daughter has gone on a yearly vacation with them since she's 7. There have been countless sleepovers between both houses. My kids love our home. I want you to imagine a sweet home in the country with gardens for fresh produce, a kitchen with a big golden chair where David would read. Our daughter's best friend and their daughter, Mary Jane, is like a second child to me. She's spent a lot of time at our house over the years. But after she got her license, she stopped spending the night as much. She would hang out right until bedtime with all the friends, and then she'd be so excited to go home so that she could wake up at their family home to see her parents again. Talking about coffee. The fact that she would explain this to me says something when a teenager wants to get home with their parents. It makes sense that their home was so peaceful. It's tangible, you can feel it. It makes sense if you know David and Jane's personalities. When I think of the fruits of the Spirit, I can honestly say that's David I know. Very peaceful, calm, sound mind. There were many times that Jane and David would have at least 3 of my children over at their house for homemade slip slides or makeshift swimming pools, creek days, berry picking, and old-fashioned fun. It is still the norm with our girls, even in college when they come home. They jump back and forth between the houses today. We love this family and you can tell their family to us. We were shocked with allegations but never felt that our children were not safe around David. I share so much about our kids because I think it says a lot about David's character that we would trust our most prized possessions with Auburn family. We don't do that with everyone. It is hard to imagine that his kids would have to endure more milestones without their dad. I think of when Mary Jane was on homecoming court for when both kids graduated. He's an amazing father, always present with his full attention, teaching his kids honestly, even faithful to that calling while incarcerated on their valued phone calls. There's no doubt in my mind that David will make the absolute most of the opportunity for parole. That is who he is. He will continue to be a giving, caring friend, father, husband, as he has always been. The David I have known all of these years, in 20 years raising kids, is upstanding, kind, incredibly giving man. I didn't know the version of David that led to his incarceration. Never seen that. It feels foreign to me that there would be a different version of David that I have known all these years. We are a family strong in our Christian faith, and to watch David and Jane through this process leaning on Christ has been amazing. It has increased our faith, and it honestly still does. They took a situation that could have torn them apart, and they grew stronger in their faith as a family. If that is not an example enough of what they would do and what David would do with the opportunity of coming home, I don't know what is. We have never stopped loving the Oppermans and plan to support and love David in any way that we can. We plan to help him reintegrate into his life upon his return. And we really do consider it an honor.
Thank you for those words. Appreciate that. All right, now we will hear from Jennifer Cameron, the attorney for Mr. Hopper.
Good morning, honorable board members. My name is Jennifer Cameron. I'm honored to speak on behalf of Mr. Opperman this morning. As you can see, the community support of Mr. Opperman is it's so immense and it's so intense. They all, and everybody who is in support of him feels the lack of his presence in his community. Mr. Opperman, he has been reflecting on himself all the way back to high school. We had a very telling conversation just a couple of weeks ago where he told me that this situation has given him the ability to reflect on who that indulgent alcoholic man was 20 plus years ago. He goes back, he's reflecting on everything he's done throughout his entire life that might have been a transgression on people, and realizes exactly who he was and who he wants to continue to be, which is the man solid in his faith, solid in his marriage, an amazing father. Reports from the community just are immense. In fact, of all the parole packets that I've done and clemency packets, I've been in front of this honorable board several times over the last couple of years. He has gotten the most letter of support. And for a community that's so small like St. Francisville, to me, that tells of his character immensely. He has maximized his time in prison. As he said, he could have just sat back 5 years. It's 5 years to most people. You know, the people he's incarcerated with are doing much longer periods of time. And their recommendations, as he said, was just to sit back and do it. But David didn't want to do that. He wanted to go home to his children and his beloved wife, Jane. I just asked this board to consider that David has been sober for over 18 years. He plans to continue that. He plans to get active in Alcoholics Anonymous again when he goes home. He has members of AA also wrote supporting letters for him. And I would just like to note that while David did note that he pled no contest to these charges, I would like to note that he does take responsibility for his actions. He knows that alcoholic indulgent man from 20-something years ago cannot resurface. Like that person, it was a completely different person. David was thrown into a situation where he all of a sudden had power and privilege that he had not grown up with, and it went to his head, and he acknowledges that. He knows that the actions that he was taking at that time hurt not just the complainants in this case, but the community at large and family. And he takes responsibility for that. David is an amazing father. Y'all have seen pictures of him in Boy Scouts with his children, coaching baseball with his children. His children, in fact, wrote some of the most compelling letters I think I've ever seen as well. So we just ask that this board take into account the fact that these allegations were so long ago, and he has done almost half of his sentence, and he would benefit to his community going home. I would also like the board to take into account the fact that David is, I don't want to say he's not elderly, he's just older, and he's starting to have some medical issues that they cannot figure out at David Wade, and we would really appreciate the opportunity to get him to some good doctors who could determine what's going on. He's actually already lost several teeth, and they can't figure out why. This incarceration is not serving David in any way anymore. He has done his time, and we would just appreciate the board giving him a chance to come home and get the medical attention he needs and be there for his children. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, now we will switch to the opposition. And first off, we'll hear from the victim, Miss Emma Acorn or Hush. You're going to help me being from North Louisiana. How do you say that last name?
Acorn.
Acorn? Okay, that's what
Acorn.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Good morning. My name is Emma Benton Acorn. Thank you for allowing me to share my concerns this morning. I'm here today to respectfully urge the board to deny parole for David Opperman, who committed a deeply harmful crime that has affected my life in profound ways. David Offerman inflicted pain and trauma that has stayed with me well beyond the time since the offense occurred. The impact of this crime has been lasting, affecting my mental and emotional well-being, my relationships, and my sense of safety. Additionally, this individual's horrific actions have profoundly affected how I parent my 3 young children, leading me to prioritize teaching protective measures from a very young age. I fear that allowing his parole would not only bring back feelings of insecurity and fear, but would also undermine the sense of justice that I have found, knowing that he is facing the consequences of his actions. He has a history of substance abuse, repeated sexual offenses against juveniles, and that absence of clear evidence of true remorse. In fact, excuse me, although he has community support, the Louisiana Supreme Court found him unremorseful and disbarred him. With a plea of no contest, he has not taken accountability for his actions, and all of these things raise significant concerns about his potential to reoffend. Please consider the enduring impact this crime has had on me and the ongoing need for justice and protection. For these reasons, I strongly ask that David Offerman remain in custody and that his parole be denied. Thank you.
Dr. Acorn, thank you very much. Appreciate those words. And now we'll close this out with Mr. Jeff Traylor, the Louisiana representative from the Louisiana Attorney's office. Yes, you could speak right there where you are.
I'll move.
Mr. Bowers asked the first question of Mr. Opperman, what did you do to get here? I can understand why he wouldn't want to say exactly in detail. I will. Emma was 13 years old. She was babysitting at the Opperman house in their chair. Mr. Opperman and his wife, who came to speak here today, came home from a party. They went to bed. Ms. Opperman fell asleep, and Mr. Opperman got up from the bed as his wife slept and entered the bed that Emma was sleeping in. They had her stay over because it was late. They were going to bring her home the next morning. Mr. Opperman got in the bed with Emma and forced her to perform oral sex on him. That's why we're here. That's what he pled to. And he got away with it for nearly 20 years. Emma lives with this every day, as she said. When we were preparing this case and speaking with Emma in potential trial, I asked her, why now? Why did you come forward? Why now? What happened? And Emma said, well, I was about to get married and start my new life with my husband and when they have a family. And I was driving through downtown Baton Rouge. And I saw David walking down the street. And I realized I've been living with this every day since it happened. And he has had no consequences for his actions. It's always amazing the strength and the courage people have to come forward when she finally did. The defendant must be held accountable in this case. This was not a mistake. He should serve his whole time. Not only what he did to Emma was cruel, selfish, and disgusting, he hurt these fine people right here. I have no doubt these are nice, good people with a good loyalty. He hurt them too. He took them himself away from them. This was an agreed upon plea, and he should serve the whole time for his actions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. All right. Warden, I'd like to hear what you might have to say about anything about him, Mr. Opperman.
Yes, sir. When Mr. Opperman came to David Wade back in 2023, he went into protective custody for a brief period of time. And then once he entered into general population, he began working as an inmate law counsel and was very helpful to other inmates as far as providing guidance and assistance, and still does that on his own to this day. He does do some tutoring for our academic courses in addition to currently working in the warehouse. He has a good work evaluation from his supervisor that he's always willing to help, and and works very hard in any capacity that we put him in. He has completed reentry, as was stated before. He is currently enrolled in victims awareness and has completed and is utilized as a facilitator in a sex offender treatment program, in addition to being on the waiting list for a substance abuse course, and is currently participating in AANA. I have had the opportunity of meeting his wife, which is his residence plan. I do think that he has a really good support system in that aspect, and he does have an employment plan of doing some contracting work, self-employed, and some custom contracting if paroled. So he's no disciplinary issue here whatsoever. He's never had any rule violation reports.
Okay. Thank you, Warden. We appreciate that. Mr. Barrett, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I have no more questions.
Okay. Ms. Jerry, is there anything you'd like to add?
I have one question. Mr. Opperman, when you were sentenced, did you have a plea agreement? Did you have a plea agreement?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so I have a copy of your sentencing minutes. Do you remember the content of that plea agreement?
Yes, ma'am. Do you want me to express how I remembered, or?
Well, let me just cite this and see if you understand it correctly. You were given a 7-year sentence with 2 years suspended, and then you'll have 3 years of probation upon release. And the defendant shall not be eligible for any termination of probation under any circumstances. Do you remember that statement within the plea agreement?
I do, yes, ma'am. That was for the first 3 years of probation. There will be a probationary period beyond that as well.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Do you have some clarification of that?
Yes, for Ms. Ledoux, his probationary period will, whenever he is released, he'll have a 3-year probationary period. Under no circumstances is that probationary period to be terminated. So he'll have to do the full 3 years. So that's what that was in reference to. Just to clarify from Ms. Ledoux.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, how many approximately days have you spent in jail, in custody?
I don't know the number, Mr. Prater. I'm sorry. I arrived at Hunt on August the 10th of 2022.
Okay. And before that, were you in a local facility for a long time or anything, awaiting?
Oh, I'm sorry. Warden Ackland has the.
You've been in since.
Oh, I'm sorry. June 10th of 2022. I'm sorry, Mr. Prater. No, sir. I think that I was in the West Feliciana Parish Jail for 3 days and was able to post bond.
So you've been in about 2 years and 4 months, just roughly speaking. Okay, that's all. That's all I need to know. Okay, we've heard from the those in favor, and we've heard from those in opposition. We've heard from the victim. We've heard from Mr. Opperman. We've heard from the warden, and we've had a chance to ask some questions. Now, is the board prepared to vote? Okay, Mr. Barrett, what is your vote since you were the lead on this?
This is a tough one. Mr. Opperman, I commend you on the changes you made in your life and the amount of victim support you have is, like she said, quite a lot. However, at this point, I cannot vote to let you out early based on the age of the victim, law enforcement opposition, the victim opposition, and the relatively short time that you've spent so far for this type of crime.
Okay, Ms. Ledoux.
Mr. Opperman, I wish all of the offenders that appeared before us were had the kind of support and respect you have. Your reentry, when it happens, should be very good. I'm going to concur with my colleague. It's only a matter of the time served. Everything else would be no hindrance for me. I do not
Thank
see
you,
that, I don't think that you're a threat, what I can tell, to the public. So but it's the amount of time served for the crime.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mister, as you know, this is got to be unanimous, and so therefore your parole has been denied. My vote, just for the record, will also be to deny. Okay, that'll conclude this case. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.